especially excited about today's episode.
Yeah, this is a really good episode, guys. And we don't say this on we say
we do
this.
that. I feel like I say I'm always excited about this episode, but we get to choose the guest. So, but yes, I'm going to be excited.
We're so excited right now because, not only is it 95 degrees here in the desert of Mexico at a truck stop where we just did this interview, like we're so excited because we are talking with one of the coolest people we have talked to in a while.
We talked to some really cool people on this podcast, I will say. I'm always amazed at who agrees to come on. But this episode is with, you'll probably know her as Rachel Rudwall. That's what her handle is all across online. She is a storyteller. She storytells through, in the past, TV. She's been nominated for an Emmy. She's a photojournalist. She writes. She does it all. So Rachel has a really beautiful take on travel and storytelling and authenticity mixed with ethics and just... It's one of those episodes I'm just like, yes. She I feel like she says so much of what she articulates it. Rachel does a great job articulating what I've had a hard time saying I want to do. And she's doing it. And
she's doing it so well. Like we ended the conversation and both, we were trying to just grab Rachel's phone number and calendar because we really wanted to hang out with her.
We're like, hey, you want to be friends?
Yeah, she immediately. So, but anyway.
No, she was a really cool guest.
Really cool guest, and we can't wait to share this episode. But before we share the episode, please, for the love of all, go to iTunes, and if you could leave a review, it really helps creators like us. It helps immensely, and we ask this on every episode, but it does mean a lot.
Yes. All right. Are you done?
Yeah, that's my spill. Oh, by the way, we're Chris and Sarah.
Oh, we didn't. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're new here, welcome. This is what no one tells you.
Yeah, and we interview other travelers or we talk about travel. And right now we're on the Pan American Highway in the middle of Mexico. So thus that explains why we're in 95-degree weather talking to Rachel right now. But without further ado, let's just get into our conversation with Rachel Rudwall. Let's just jump right into it. So, yeah, Rachel, who are you? What do you do? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Who are you?
My name is Rachel Rudwall, and I am a travel storyteller. I use the word storyteller because there are a lot of different forms that storytelling can take. I've worked as a producer and a camera operator on TV series for networks like Discovery Channel, National Geographic Channel, and History Channel. I've worked as an on-camera host for action adventure series on Travel Channel before it was all just dudes eating things or chasing ghosts. Which, let's get real, that's what it became.
What happened?
Unclear. Paranormal sort of invaded. The ghosts won is what happened. The ghosts won. And in addition to the TV work, the super cool thing about when I sort of came up in the storytelling world is eventually social media really democratized the ways that we access the world. So now we have all these amazing social media platforms and people don't need the cable package to learn more about the world from creators or storytellers that they follow. So I can write articles and shoot photography for brands or publications, or I can just share it directly on my Instagram and have more direct conversations with people. It's also worth noting that I am from Ohio. What we were chatting about right before you hit record is there's a raging debate in Ohio about whether you are a Skyline chili person or a Gold Star chili person. I just want everybody to know, tuning in, I'm a Waffle House person. This feels important to me. Yeah. So just if there's only one thing you take away from this, it's hash brown scattered, covered, smothered.
Yes. Or the chocolate chip waffle. That's my favorite. That's Christmas treat.
100%. See,
Christmas.
I'm a Skyline person, so I love Skyline.
But what's the difference between those two chilies?
I
know we're getting derailed here. They taste the same though, right?
To the untrained tongue, yes.
Gross. Okay.
Yeah, anyway. If only you'd been trained in the ways, Sarah, of the fine chilies of Ohio.
That's such a gross way to say that. Why did you say that? Okay. Well, Rachel, let's dig into... Actually, let's first have you say, what's your handle online? Because I don't know if people are going to recognize your full name, because you go by Rachel Rudwall online.
That's right. I go by Rachel Rudwall. Okay. So Rachel Rudwall. RMS, not my real last name now. You know, you're in the know. That's my handle on all the platforms. You can also find that is my website URL. So rachelromes.com if you want to know more.
Perfect. I wanted to connect those dots for people who may not recognize your last name but know who you are.
Yeah.
All right, let's dig into places. Can we just jump right into it?
Sure.
You have been to dozens of countries, all 7 continents, I believe. What places stand out to you from a storytelling point of view? Like, is there a country or destination that you just passionately fell in love with telling stories from?
Yeah. I mean, the really incredible thing is everywhere we go has the potential to teach us something. We have the potential to connect to it. It was just Earth Day recently, and for sure we have the coolest planet so far. So when I'm out exploring, when I'm out on these projects or just personal adventures, I tend to find that I'm really most connected to places either that have a grand scale in terms of landscapes where I feel small in a good way and like I get to be connected to the bigger whole, or there's some sort of really cool invitation into a culture or a subculture where I'm allowed to kind of peek behind the curtain and see the wedding or watch somebody cook a meal or be invited to sit on the floor and you know, share a cup of tea with somebody. Specifically, in terms of big landscapes, Antarctica, really high on my list of places that I just find immensely inspiring. It is not only a cold place, as we've come to expect, it's also the windiest continent. It's the continent with the highest average elevation. It's a bunch of superlatives. And for that reason, I figured when I go there, it just seems vast and kind of shades of gray and foreboding in a beautiful way, hopefully. And what I found was that it is so much more colorful and just jam-packed with life. There are all sorts of living beings who thrive in this very particular ecosystem. And to be there and to see the penguin colonies and to hear the seabirds and to see it all work together, it was just so much more full than I could have expected. So for me, that's at the top of the list. And there are loads of other places. I mean, culturally, Mexico City, love. Bhutan, up in the Himalayas, love. Japan, love. And they're all really different than one another. But what's cool about each of them is they are welcoming and there's a lot that's delicious. And so you can just have an adventure no matter what it is that interests you.
Yes.
I love that.
I do too. I want to talk about Antarctica because Antarctica has been number one on my bucket list for at least 15 years now. So I'm dying to go there one day. How did you experience Antarctica? Did you do a cruise? Did you fly in? I mean, I know a lot of people are doing the whole cruise thing now, but what's the best way to experience it?
There are, like you said, multiple ways to get there. There are more ways now than there have been in the past, given that there are more flights that are landing there. The sort of OG, the classic way of getting there is by ship. And it's leaving either from southern South America or from New Zealand. I think these are the two kind of main hubs that people can leave from on a ship. The closest part of the Antarctic continent to other continents is the Antarctic Peninsula. And it's sort of reaching up into the ocean towards South America. So that's a slightly easier jumping off point for lots of people is from the Patagonia. You can leave from Chile, you can leave from Argentina. You have 2 days on the boat crossing the notorious Drake Passage. It is a location that is a part of sort of human history, maritime history. I just read a book called The Wager by Gran, who's this absolutely incredible nonfiction storyteller who wrote like Lost City of Z, and he really dives into mystery and tries to help determine what it was that happened. And so The Wager is a story of shipwreck and mutiny around the Drake Passage, and it's like crazier than fiction. Highly recommend people check it out. But you're crossing this body of water where multiple ocean currents merge, and that makes for a sometimes tumultuous passage. And so you can either have the experience of what they call the Drake Shake, which is when there's a big swell and you're sort of like rocking and rolling, or you have the Drake Lake, and that means it's really calm. And I had the benefit of the Drake Lake on one of the directions of travel. and sort of a really low-key Drake shake on the other. It was like 10-foot swells, which I'm not great with seasickness, but I did get the scopolamine patch behind my ear, which really helped. Just get a prescription patch that helps with that. And long story long, this is one of the best, sort of the most reliable ways to get there. If you don't have beaucoup dollars to take a, charter flight and go stay on the continent. It's also one of the less invasive ways to participate in playing in this wondrous space that is Antarctica, because you take shore landings, you go on Zodiacs, which are rigid inflatable boats. You go to shore, you spend a couple hours in smaller groups. And so you tend to, depending on the size of your expedition ship, cycle through groups of people. So one group's on shore and one group's on the boat, so that you're trying to minimize some of the human impact on this continent that really does need to remain wild.
That's so cool. I've always wondered how bad the Drake Passage was. You hear stories of it, and I've seen videos on YouTube that, these ships are just like having waves just splash the dining room windows and stuff, and it just looks a little bit terrifying, I think. Yeah. But also, I think it's totally worth it. I think it's part of the experience.
And it depends on the day.
I don't know. Maybe I'll regret saying that.
Well, or you'll have a great story later. It's fine.
Right.
That's
how the stories are made.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that everything in life is either a good experience or a good story later. So the toughest stuff that has impacted us in our lives as mortal beings, the toughest, the worst, the weirdest, or the most uncomfortable can be like absolutely your best story. But I wish for you to have the Drake Lake and also some maybe prescription medication or Dramamine with you just in case.
Just in case. Just in case.
So when you're like on this adventure, say like you're going to Antarctica, like this, this trip, in your mind, like, I mean, did you do that for like a film project, or like were you creating something? Were you just going just to go?
I was on an assignment on that particular trip, and this was for a Farm magazine, which is a travel magazine that I write and shoot photography for. And so I've been an ambassador with AFAR since 2016. I think. And they were working in partnership with a luxury expedition cruise company to send somebody to the Antarctic to shoot photography, write articles, and also do some social media promotion. And I was very happily the one who got selected for the assignment.
Dream job right there. Amazing. Congratulations. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's where I want to go. Like, I want to ask this because you're on the boat, like the waves are smooth because you said it was a little bit, but you're heading to this foreign land. Do you feel like when you're in that moment about to capture, like you're on assignment, you're about to capture these moments, do you feel like does the weight of this like go with you, or is it just kind of another average day? You just happen to be on a boat going to Antarctica. Does that make sense? Like, you're like, hey, I'm sort of like Shackleton right now, or, I'm just like, I'm exploring this unknown world, or is it just another 9-to-5 job?
Great question. For me, the 9-to-5 job comes in the edit bay. It comes in the follow-up emails. It comes in the copywriting and the editing of the article or the editing of the photographs, the pre-production, all that stuff. That's the 9-to-5 job of it all. And that's what is often lacking from what people would see about something like this shared on social media. They go like, that's the dream job. And of course, for me, it is. For the right person, it is. But it also does involve work that's not always fun and cute and glamorous. When I'm on the ship, when I'm looking to the horizon and I see a new landmass, or I'm on a plane and I'm heading to a new destination to tell a story, for me, all the synapses are firing. I really feel I operate at my best when I'm out of my comfort zone because I'm more aware. Like, the door is cracked wide open. And no matter how prepared I think or feel I am, I have to be ready to receive new information, new inputs, sights, smells, sounds. For me, that's when I'm most alive, and when I feel most connected, and when I feel most vulnerable. And that makes me a better storyteller. The more open I am, the more open others are to share their story. And it's not always easy. It's not always beautiful or glamorous, but for me, it's always rewarding, and it is where I feel most connected to everything around me.
Love that. And I want to ask you, how do you approach storytelling? How do you go in without maybe preconceived, like you went into Antarctica thinking that it was going to be very gray and very flat and it was completely different. How do you keep your mind open to experience what it has for you to experience?
Great question.
Sense?
Yeah, it does. I think what immediately strikes me about the question is this sort of condition that we all experience now that we're in like the Instagram era, where everyone has preconceived notions about those famous places that they're going in that specific shot they think they should get. And so they miss everything else. If we are too focused on what we think life is supposed to be, broadly speaking, we miss life as it happens. And so for me to be my best storyteller, for me to be the best conduit that I can, it's about not just going in kind of prepared with and armed with research, but also knowing that if I have too specific of expectation, then I miss life as it stands. I miss the entire story. And it's also essential to be a really good listener. It's easy to miss the point if we're always talking. And it's really powerful when you sit with someone and you're learning about them or their home or their lives, and you let them fill silence. And none of us are that comfortable with silence. So if you wait long enough, people tend to want to fill it. And that's how you get invited in, is by being your best listener and letting go of the expectations.
Oh, that is so good.
I love that.
I am so guilty of that. I mean, here we are. You just quit talking for like half a second. And I jumped in because I was like, there's silence there. That's really good advice, just to kind of like sit in silence. I actually had one of my best friends one time. She's like, she's really good. She doesn't talk very much. And she's just like, I don't say anything unless there's something that needs to be said. And I've always carried that with me. And you're kind of saying the same thing of like, you don't always have to fill the noise. And we're so guilty of that, I think.
Most people are, if it makes you feel any better. Most people are. It's social training to not be comfortable with silence. We're trained to not be comfortable with our own company. So we always need to be surrounded by people. We have these weird social trainings that exist for whatever reason based on kind of our social heritage. But it's an opportunity for us to examine those trainings and go, is this helping right now or not?
That's good. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely going to be working on that. Actually, that's because what we're doing right now is very much, we're traveling into these smaller communities, overlanding through South America, and they don't see as many tourists in the places that we're going. And so there's a lot of opportunity to see a different side of a culture that most people don't get to see. But there's always that wall up of just like, how do you break through to see like, get invited to their house to see their family in action, or I don't know what that looks like, but just to see like the real life. And maybe silence is the answer sometimes, just to open that door.
Well, yeah. And it's actually funny that you say that, because we just took a ferry from Baja California to mainland Mexico, and it was during the silent moment. Sarah and I were sitting on top of the deck of the ferry, just like we're not overwhelmed, but it was loud.
Overstimulated. It was loud.
Overstimulated. And we were just being silent, and then Pepe, this guy came up who lives here in Mexico and just wanted to talk and started like sitting down, giving us all these different places to visit. And it was just like a beautiful moment of, oh, cool, this guy wants to know about us and we want to know about him. And we're just happy to share all this information. And so, you're absolutely right.
And that's a beautiful thing too, because sometimes when we're traveling with other people, traveling with other people is a blast for a lot of reasons and varying experiences, and you have a co-conspirator and all the things you get up to. But I find when I'm traveling solo, I meet a lot more people because I'm not otherwise already engaged in conversation. There's not this like closed feedback loop that people don't, anybody outside of a conversation that's like this is going to feel like they're barging in. So sometimes you might find that, you because you're overstimulated, you're just sitting not otherwise engaged in the conversation. And that's somebody's in to say, oh, cool, I can connect with these other human beings who happen to be on the same ferry as I'm on. And I also think one of the tools that's available to us is humor, and play is a tool, and attempting other languages is a tool, no matter how embarrassing we think we sound when we get it wrong. Like the spirit of openness that exists in being okay to get it wrong because you're doing it in the mindset of connection, share positive energy. A lot comes from that. And it's easy to be like really focused on getting point A to point B when we're traveling. It's also really easy to be sort of in like bitch face. If you're like, this is unfamiliar, I need to protect myself. I need to make sure that I know where I'm going to park at night, or whatever it is that you're facing on a given day. So when we let the guard down and we're not already engaged in these familiar patterns and conversations, when we're open to playing and maybe like getting a little embarrassed by greeting someone in a second language poorly, a lot of good can happen.
Sorry, allergies.
I can relate.
I'm trying so hard to like hold the sneeze. We'll cut this out. I'm so sorry.
That goes on the bloopers. It's fine. Sneezes are about as relatable as things get. Everyone sneezes.
My eyes are like watering. I don't know if it's sunscreen or the pollen or what. Mexico's taking its toll on me today.
It was a really moving story Chris just told. So
yeah. Exactly. Well, so
you were onto something really good there. Do you have a question? Because I have 20.
No. Go ahead.
I always have like 20 questions, Rachel. Like, this is the problem with our podcast is Chris will send people questions we're going to go over, and then I just derail the whole thing. Like, I have 50
We're just
questions
like, hey, we
after
want to talk
2
about
minutes.
this.
You know why that is?
Why?
That's because you're being your best listener.
See, you're doing good.
You are. You're going where conversation
very curious
leads. This makes you a better facilitator for storytelling, because if you're stuck on the question that you thought you were going to ask, you miss the thing that was said. So, follow the thread.
You're so good at this, though. You're really good
You're
interviewee.
Good. Yeah, but you're good on your feet too. You're right. Like, it is about storytelling, and it's about knowing the flux of and the arc of the story, right? Mm-hmm. Of like where they're at and what they're doing and how to relate, and it's super fascinating. And how did you get good at that, or are you just born natural, like a natural storyteller?
Yeah. What's your background? I'm curious.
It's all practice. As with all things, it's all practice. I mean, being from Ohio, I do come from a family that tells tall tales because we were living in a place that was flat and we had to entertain ourselves somehow. But I will say, I mean, I went to college for international relations and foreign languages. I loved language broadly, like it's English first, but then I studied Latin and Spanish and French and Italian and Portuguese, and I started to realize that, I mean, not only is playing in different languages fun, because it's musical and it's sort of a gateway drug to connecting with people on their terms, it's also what defines our perception of the world. So the way that we interact with our world is so heavily defined by language that the more you sort of dig in, the juicier it gets. And then when I, after graduation, branched out into the professional world, I wanted to become a storyteller. And I learned from people who are already really good at it: camera operators, producers on docuseries, writers. And I continue to learn, and I will always continue to learn. Sometimes I read an article and I go, man, to write like that. Or I watch a show and I'm like, man, to be that good at cinematography. I think hopefully we're all of the mind that there's always more to learn. I could always continue gathering skills and becoming a better version of what a storyteller looks like for me as a person, right? But I started with practicing and playing in the space of going, a story, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Or a great story is really well communicated through a great soundbite. So when you're cutting together like your little teaser or whatever, you find that moment that feels really exciting to you and you go, yeah, this is the soundbite that we think relays the experience. So you're practicing too. You're both in that world already of practicing to be storytellers. And I think it's something we do every day. It's just a matter of continuing to say, how else can I make this connect better with the audience that I'm here to serve?
I like that. I like that you have such a journalistic point of view on this too. Like, I like that you see the world from a analytical standpoint, but also just like how you want to experience it. And you were talking a minute ago about like going into places and preconceived ideas of what you think it's going to be like. But I'm curious, as a journalist, like I feel like it takes a certain amount of research when you're on assignment to tell a story. But how do you balance enough research to get the information, know what to expect without having it ruin the experience with ideas that you formulate in your own head?
Great question. Yes, you do have to do a certain amount of research. You don't want to show up and be the person who's like, so where am I? People are like, are you kidding? Because then you can't honor the story or the people or the place at all. You look like an idiot. But it's a matter of kind of keeping yourself in check and feeling it out in real terms, I think, where you might be so stuck on what you thought the story was and you realize it's happening over here and it's, like your camera's facing this way and it's, you have to just suss it out as you go. And that's another thing you have to keep in practice on making sure that your expectations aren't getting in the way of the real thing.
Hey, real quick, we just wanted to say thanks for listening to What No One Tells You, and we'd love for you to join our little community. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
You usually have a camera in hand, kind of like we do, I'm guessing. How do you keep that from getting in the way of the experience too? How do you keep people from making it feel intrusive, I guess? Because that's always the hard part of like, you want to approach the people first and then bring out the camera or make sure they're okay with it. But how do you navigate that to make it natural and authentic?
Great question. And actually, I hear two questions in that. How do you keep the camera from getting in the way of the experience? And also, how do you continue to stay respectful of potential subjects and not be exploitative? The first question I would answer was saying, I've gotten better and better at learning when not to bring the camera at all, which is hard for me because it means that I'll risk missing something beautiful or powerful that I could have put on my website or framed or, it's sort of a dance I have to do where I go, this trip that I'm going on, this, whether it's a backpacking trip or an overseas trip or whatever it is, I have to go, is it worth it for me if this isn't a work-specific project? Is it worth it to have the camera? Or is that going to get in the way? Get in the way of, looking people in the eye. Get in the way of having a good time because I'm worried about whether my gear's okay. Get in the way of fill in the blank. So I have that conversation with myself really regularly. And I have a 2.5-year-old. And I also end up not taking as many photos or videos for public consumption when he's around because he doesn't live on my social channels in a way that's identifiable. And so that's sort of a natural governor to me experiencing and being present in those moments without being like, oh, I gotta get the shot. But when it comes to not being exploitative, you make the point that should have the relationships first. You shouldn't just be walking up to a market stall and taking a picture of a vendor and walking away and going like, this is going to look great on my Instagram. And the thing is, you might or might not know that if you haven't been in that situation before. But think of how it would make you feel. I found myself on a train in New York last week, and there was a guy sort of like looking through his phone in a way that I could see that he was taking a picture of someone on the train and kind of smirking to himself. And I immediately felt like, ugh. And I don't know what he was doing. And maybe he was like, I love their sneakers, whatever it was. But because I didn't know the intent, I felt very on guard. And I'm a photographer, and I get photos of the world, and so I know what it's like to be on both sides. But you can walk up to the market stall and you can buy a piece of fruit and you can chat to the person and you can pantomime, don't speak the same language. And eventually, if you're curious, you can say, would it be okay if I take it? You sort of pantomime like, and sometimes they'll say no. And sometimes they'll say yes. And you just have to be respectful in those moments to invite people into a shared moment and not take from them what is not yours.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
So good.
There is a reel that popped up on our Instagram a couple weeks ago, and we keep referencing this reel. Whoever,
it's so cringy. It's so real.
Whoever made it, he did a great job. But he was like, point of view, you're working at a food stall in Thailand, and a vlogger walks up, and it was this guy with a camera, and he was like, oh, is it spicy? Is it? And the camera's always in the face, and it's
so bad.
It was so bad, and he was doing it as a parody, but it just struck like a chord. I'm like, oh, I hope I never come off like that ever, Yeah, and so that's such great advice, just to even ask, like just point to the camera and ask and say, is it okay if I film? And like they understand.
Yeah, they. I mean, even today we were filming at this little. It wasn't like a street. It was a very small, like hole in the wall kind of place here in Guadalajara, and we asked him, like we walked in, we ordered our food, and then as he was making it, we're like, is it okay if we film? Like we had already said hello and everything, and he was like, yeah, of course. And like 9 times out of 10, at least here in Mexico, they'll like almost ham it up for you, like they'll give you like a good show, like cooking the food and stuff. But it's like once you ask that permission and allow them to have dignity to say no, that they just, a lot of times they open up even more to you and try to talk. And that's
the invitation, right? You're extending an invitation. Yeah. You're excited about what someone is offering, and they say, yeah, I want to play in that space with you. And then you respect it if the answer is no. And I mean, even the language of photography is exploitative in a way that I am aware of now, but wouldn't have been of beginning. And there's a photographer that I love and admire very much named Amy Vitale, and she's been a photographer for National Geographic and just doing change-making work for many, many years. She started as a war correspondent, so she was really in the thick of capturing the difficult moments, and has since evolved into one of the preeminent storytellers on wildlife conservation. And I went to a talk that she had, and she was like, even the words, the verbiage in photography are about take. You capture a photograph, you shoot a picture. And so there's just so much that is kind of intrinsically take about photography or video recording, that being aware of what it is that you're asking and being respectful, and actually asking in the first place, that's a great place to start.
I had never thought about it like that. You're right. Everything is so, I don't know. I always kind of feel like the night markets or any sort of market is a great example. Like you're talking about, like just walking up to the vendor and throwing a camera in their face. Like I always kind of feel like doing that makes me feel like they're an animal in the zoo. Like you just walked up to their cage and you're like, hey, like it just always feels so weird. And I always try to be really sensitive of that, but I don't know. We still have more to learn, I'm sure, but it's definitely something to consider. I mean, like as we enter these people's communities, like this is their home, and we don't want to just come in, take, and then leave.
Yeah, this is their home. Yeah. You're in it. So what would you do to be a good house guest?
Yeah,
absolutely. So when you're on assignment, or maybe it's for your your personal platform as well, is there are there strict guidelines? Like how what's the blurred line of taking somebody's photo or video, or capturing these moments, and then it's used for, like, I don't want to say like monetary gain, but you are telling a story, and then a lot of times that story is being sold on like a magazine, or maybe it's a video or like a film or whatever like that. So is there a line that goes with that as well? Like, I mean, for us, we make money from our YouTube videos like that, and it's always, I always feel like there's a weird line. Like when we take this, I'm like, I'm not sharing the profit with these people that I'm telling the story about. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So if you want to get serious about it and do your due diligence on these projects, create a photo release form, print it out, bring it with you. If there are people that you are having interviews with, that you're filming in their cafes, if you're at their market stall having a chat, things like that, and it's going into a project that's monetized, have them sign the release. Say, hey, before we start filming, would you be open to signing this release form that just says that this conversation that we're having can live on our YouTube channel? I think in the context of monetized projects, that's absolutely something that you should consider doing. And I mean, like for B-roll purposes, there are going to be many, many people in the back of shots and things like that. And you're not going to paste up like if you enter this night market, you are hereby recorded and I license your likeness in perpetuity. Like that's not, you don't. And then you also start to run into like the question of, well, I haven't talked to the appropriate authorities about that either.
Yeah.
But if it's for YouTube and it is something that you're able to capitalize on as business people, it'd be great to get a blanket photo release form. There are all sorts of templates online. Figure out what works best for you. And for people who are featured prominently in your project that you are earning money from, you can have them sign their release form.
That's really smart to save yourself. I mean, like, to protect them and yourself, but because it doesn't. I'm always so worried we're gonna have a lawsuit. We haven't done anything wrong that I know of, but I'm always just like, oh gosh, it's like tax season. I'm scared to death of the IRS, and I have no idea why. It's just like I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, I think we're all appropriately scared of the IRS. At least that's when people are like, "What's your favorite season?" I'm always like fall, but then when people are like, "Do you have a least favorite?" I'm like, tax season.
Tax season.
Tax season, yeah.
And you probably are like us where you're self-employed a bit and it's just a nightmare.
Not the most fun.
1099s everywhere.
Everywhere. All over the floor.
I do love your work. I was looking through your Instagram just before we got on the call, and you show people with such dignity. Like, specifically this one photo that stood out to me was you were in Mongolia, and there was this happy little child, and it looked like to be a yurt. But how do you capture those authentic moments, especially when it comes to children? Because, like, I know you have, like, your own child who you said is about 2.5. I mean, what's that, like, how do you balance that? Because we're always struggling. I mean, we see some really cute kids. Like, just yesterday, we were in the center, like, historic area in Guadalajara, and there's this adorable little kid who, like, walked up and started petting our dog. And I want to capture that, but also, like, how do you, this is like 10 questions in one. I'm really bad about that, where I want to, Chris is laughing. I, like, try to get as many questions into one to trick people and, like, get as much information as possible. How do you go about that? Because that picture was really moving, and I loved it. Like, how do you protect them?
Thank you. That particular project was an assignment that I had to cover the Golden Eagle Festival in Western Mongolia. This is a festival that showcases a Kazakh tradition, and it's in the far reaches of Mongolia, like, I don't know, 50-ish miles from the border with Kazakhstan. And it's this small community of people who've been using golden eagles to hunt for the last few hundred years. And so they ride on horseback. They have these beautiful eagles. I mean, the lady eagles are the bigger eagles, which is pretty boss. And they have 7-foot wingspans, and they weigh like 20-some pounds. They are
Holy moly.
Beautiful. And so I was there to cover the Golden Eagle Festival. And a part of my experience was getting to spend time with a family of eagle hunters, including the patriarch, the grandfather of the little boy you're talking about. He at the time had won the Golden Eagle Festival 3 times. Won it meaning it's a series of competitions with your eagle on horseback, on foot. It's just supremely cool and interesting. And so he'd won it 3 times. And he ended up winning it again the next day or 2 days later, whatever it was, after spending time with him. He ended up winning for like a record 4th time. But he was passing on the tradition to his son. And his hope was that it would also be passed on to his grandson. And so what you see in the photograph that you're referencing, which is a black and white photo, is a moment between a grandfather and a grandson in a yurt, which is a tent, a home that nomadic peoples use. And it was a really sweet and intimate moment where just the daylight was flooding through the door to the yurt, and we had had lunch, and we'd been spending all this time, and I'd been on horseback with them already. And we had had the opportunity to connect. And so asking, may I take some portraits, they were excited about, because they had had a chance to share what it is that they love, what it is that they care about. And I'd been taking copious notes because I really wanted to honor their story and why the traditions mattered to them. And that photo series ended up winning me gold in an international photography competition. I normally don't enter my work in competition.
Whoa.
And I really felt so deeply connected to this story, and so honored that I'd been invited in, that after getting permissions from these various eagle hunters and things like that, I entered it as a body of work, and am really excited that this panel of judges who are amazing photographers agreed that this is a story worth telling, that this is a culture worth knowing about. When it comes to children more broadly, however, I've I've been invited into important knowledge, especially in recent years. The basic idea that I would present is like, would you pictures of white kids in this way and post it to your Instagram? Like, look at these cute kids.
Yep.
Because from a perspective of a perspective of privilege, as a white or white presenting person in a world that has a colonial history, there's this habit of white and white presenting people to go to places and be like, look at me surrounded by all these cute kids. But we wouldn't do that with like a group of 10 children in Ohio unless we knew them, right? We wouldn't be like, look at all these cute small humans I found. I'm going to post their faces on the internet. That's kind of
right.
Like not fine,
police
guys.
would be at your door. Yeah.
They would.
Right.
They would. And so would you do this at home with kids you didn't know?
Nope.
If the answer is no, you have a great sense of whether you should do it in other contexts. If you have permission from families, friends of the kids, to take photographs and share them for whatever storytelling purpose, I would recommend also sharing a copy with the family in whatever way you can. People usually have like a mobile phone you can text, right? You can send a digital copy so that they have this moment for their families. One of the eagle hunters that I photographed, he and I are like Facebook Messenger friends now, and I've sent him the pictures.
No
and
way.
Like, yeah, it's great, and
Cool.
and it's meaningful for them to have a record sometimes of their role in whatever it is that they were photographed doing on a given day. So would you do it at home to, in the context of little kids? If the answer is no, don't do it. And if the answer is yes or no, but it's important to this story that I'm telling and I have permission, then how can you say thanks? How can you make sure to protect that person or that family's integrity, keep them safe, and honor what it is that they've allowed you to do?
I love that. You just said so many things. I'm like, yes. I mean, even just sharing it with them via text, WhatsApp or something. Yeah. It took me back, like one of our first project we ever did together. We actually went to a refugee village along the Thai-Burma border. And these kids had never had a picture of themselves, but we were also there to document for a fundraising effort. So it felt really weird to like take their pictures and never give anything. And one of the ways we were able to thank them was like we gave each of the kids like a portrait of themselves, and they had never had that before. But we can't do that for everyone. But just even saying like WhatsApp or Facebook, like that's so tangible and easy.
Such a cool.
That's a cool idea.
And maybe there's a world in which you can get a little instant camera. I've been at events and on projects where people that I'm traveling with have like instant printout cameras a la Polaroid back in the day. I've never done that, but if you feel like that's make an offering to the people who invite you into their lives for that moment, that's pretty cute too, right? There are ways to show up in service of that. Because think how awesome it is when people go like, oh, I got this great photograph of you guys on such and such adventure. And you're like, oh, I didn't know anybody got pictures. And you're super stoked. Think of how you'd feel to receive the photo on the other side. It's joyful. It's meaningful. So it's one way that we can offer our thanks.
And first of all, like, congratulations too on winning gold for that. That project was beautiful. And Mongolia is it seems like such an exotic destination. I've always wanted to go and see how the nomadic people live in the yurts and they travel around. And so that's incredible. But congratulations.
You did kind of take the magic out of it when you said your Facebook friends. I'm like, oh yeah.
I know.
I'm like, okay.
I know, with the younger one. The elder is not on Facebook, but I'm friends with one of the younger guys. And actually the way that I met the younger guy, really, it sort of felt fantastical. Like I was in a dream sequence because it was unseasonably cold for that particular fall. This was 2 autumns ago, so about a year and a half ago. And so it was snowing on the first day of the Golden Eagle Festival. And I brought a friend with me as my plus one. And she and I were like in the backseat of this sort of 4x4 vehicle rounding this bend. And we see that there are all these eagle hunters on horseback sort of riding up alongside us, and the snow is falling. And we ended up just like, our driver pulled off on the side of the road and we like sprinted out to this clearing with this iced over river and the snow coming down as they all rode through. And I was just like, oh my God, my brain is melting. And so this one younger eagle hunter was super stoked to have his picture taken. And he also happened to have just the most beautiful face in the world. He could be like a supermodel. He could also just be the portrait boy for eagle hunters. Whatever he chooses, he can do in his life. Sitting on a horse, and he's got the eagle on his arm. And as he lifts his arms, the wings go, whoo, whoo, and the snow is falling. And it was just perfect. And this is an example of, if you're so focused on what you've planned, you miss the thing that's happening. If we'd been like, we need to be at the festival grounds, we wouldn't have pulled off on the roadside and had what are some of the loveliest visual memories that I've been able to live my way into. And we got to sit and chat with them, and some of them were smoking cigarettes. And it was like just a really lovely part of the experience. And he's the one that I'm friends with on Facebook.
So funny.
That's amazing.
I love it. I'm going to have to go back and look at more of those pictures.
He's in kind of the whole story. The last or second to last. He's standing on sort of a small, it's an outcropping, maybe 300 or 400 feet above the festival grounds, with a big old eagle on his arm.
So cool. Which, this actually kind of leads me to something that we saw on your website. The eagle thing.
The parahawking?
Yes. I had never heard of this.
Yeah.
Could you explain what you're... Do
what
you
is
do
parahawking?
Or how did you get involved in this?
Parahawking is paragliding with a hawk as your guide. It's a very specific activity that I think is extremely fun. The way that I learned about it is, I forget why I was doing some sort of internet deep dive, but I learned this was a thing in Nepal, a place that I haven't yet been, but that I've wanted to go. And then I was contracted to produce, shoot, and host a new potential series for Travel Channel, which was going to be exploring the national parks. Or parks within the U.S. more broadly, not just national parks. And they were like, what would you like the pilot episode to be about? Can you find a cool activity that's sort of unexpected to do in or around the parks? And I happened to find a guy who does parahawking in San Diego near a place called Torrey Pines. What? And I was like, what are your thoughts? And thankfully they approved it. And so... yeah, wow. You just strap yourself like you're in a Baby Bjorn, strap yourself to a new friend that you've just met that morning, run off a cliff above the ocean, and the hawk goes with you. And the hawk is great at finding thermals. So it's great at finding the spots where the air sort of just lifts you up and it minimizes the amount of effort. And so you can follow the hawk. And I'm sure an expert paraglider doesn't need a hawk, but it feels like a bonus. And so this hawk, which is she was named Shanti, the guy would be like, Om Shanti. That was the call he had, Om Shanti. And she would circle back around and she would land on his glove and he'd give her a little snack and then she'd dive back off.
What? That is so cool. That's
amazing. We're going back to San Diego.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah.
We were actually just in Torrey Pines like a month right before we crossed the border into Mexico. We were there. So that's so cool. I wish we could witness that.
That's amazing.
That is so neat. So the entire purpose of having, did you say falcon or eagle? I don't know.
It's is
it a falcon or an eagle?
Eagles are falcons, if I remember correctly. And this is a hawk, which is also a falcon. Gosh, I should talk to an expert. But this was a hawk. This is a Cooper's hawk.
That's amazing.
That is so neat. I don't remember what my question was with that.
I think you just wanted
Are birds.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of birds are birds? I'm like,
Oh, man. Is the entire point of having you just said it. It was a hawk. Yeah. Was the entire purpose of having the hawk with you just for the thermals, though? It wasn't hunting or anything, was it?
It wasn't hunting. It was just showing us how to fly like a boss, and we were following.
How cool.
Just there for a good time.
Get to feel like a bird.
Just a good time, not a long time.
Just a good time.
That's amazing. I'm getting like a very Walter Mitty.
Yeah, you're sounding a little Walter Mitty in a great way.
So this is awesome. You're like making me want to go out and do crazy things.
There's a lot of world out there. And I mean, really, truly, it's a beautiful thing to put ourselves face to face with things that are bigger than we are. Maybe that even scare us a little in a good way. Because then, not only do we feel alive, but I think we get a renewed sense of perspective and connection to our planet, which, again, is the coolest one we've found so far.
Yeah, great.
It's my favorite.
100%.
I love your I love your perspective on travel and adventure and just life general. Yeah, it's refreshing.
It's very refreshing, especially for us being in the bubble that we're in. You see you're just kind of inundated with numbers, or you're seeing this is how you can credit card blah 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 and do all this other.
There's nothing wrong.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just
not what we're passionate about.
Yeah, it's just a refreshing, beautiful perspective that you bring to travel, and we're really thankful for that.
What's your North Star? I mean, what for you is the thing you're most passionate about? Because then you can always circle back to that as your why when people are talking numbers or credit card points, or you're having to, edit down a podcast. What's your North Star?
Ours, I think, I don't know. We really love seeing places off the beaten path. I mean, that's one reason why we decided to travel overlanding, is just so we can go to these places and, experience them.
Yeah, but we both love telling stories.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like telling stories, and I don't want to say make the world seem a little smaller, but we definitely didn't grow up in families that traveled internationally. That wasn't something, and so there's always that level of fear that was put in us. I always wanted to do National Geographic, that was the dream job growing up, but we like to share with people that the world isn't scary, that there's good out there, that everyone's human, and find those common denominators in every culture that we go to, and also feature what's special about each place. Because we're both of the mindset that each place has something incredible to feature, whether it's Mississippi or Mongolia. There's going to be something there that's interesting, and I think that's what we always come back to.
Yeah, and we try to be I think that's exactly what we hope for. And I think sometimes it's hard, when you watch a TV show or whatever, you're like, oh, that's really nice for them. It almost seems like fantasy. There's that disconnect. And our goal is we try to be as authentic and real as possible, when it comes to travel, and not show the fantasy part. Does that make sense?
I don't know.
It does. I
mean, we still do it.
It does. What you both said, I think, are beautiful components of sort of your North Star. For me, the why of what I do is to connect people to the world and to each other in ways that make them more excited to walk out the front door and have a new experience, and also less afraid of the things that they don't know, or the people they don't know, or the people they've been trained to be afraid of, or the places that they've heard about that they think, oh, that's too different. So absolutely resonate with your North Star in that respect. And also the idea of making something relatable is beautiful. It's very easy, I think, if you're having a new or an interesting experience, to make things that are purely aspirational such that they actually make other people feel left out. That's never my goal. Yeah. My goal is to invite people in. And it sounds like you're also doing that by sharing the stories and sharing the journey. There's so much power in inviting people in. There's plenty of pie, as it were, right? So continue inviting in and showing them the beauty in the world, whether it's Mississippi or Mongolia. And a lot of people's worlds will be opened by the stories that you're telling.
This is such a great pep talk. I didn't know we were having you on to give us a pep talk.
No,
I'm let's go.
I really want to hang out with you more often. So please send your calendar over, and we'll just we'll navigate our way. Yeah.
Sounds good. I like it.
Yeah.
Rachel, I have so enjoyed talking to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to be at TravelCon in a couple weeks. Is that right?
I am. Yeah, I'm speaking at TravelCon. The topic is travel storytelling. It's not about you.
I will be there for that one.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. Rachel, we cannot wait to meet you in person and hang out a little bit. But
before we hang up the call, blah blah blah,
how can they find you?
Yeah, how can people find you, follow along? Because they obviously need to do that, because you're amazing and you do amazing things. So how can people follow along?
Thank you. I would love to share the world with anybody who's tuning in at Rachel Rums. That's RachelRoams. It's on all the socials, so that kind of keeps it simple. You can also find me at rachelroams.com. But pop on by. We'll share the world. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah, go check her stuff out, her work out. It's beautiful. Yeah. You'll be inspired. Rachel, thank you so much for being here. We've really had a lot of fun talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to What No One Tells You with Chris and Sarah. If you have a comment or question that you want answered on the air, be sure to send us a message to hello@chrisandsarah.com, or you can call or text our phone number at 423-825-9572. Thanks for listening.